This is a TaxCast special feature from the Tax Justice Network, produced by me, Naomi Fowler, and featuring tax justice economist Richard Murphy. For the full monthly TaxCasts with news, features and expert analysis you won't hear anywhere else, go to www.tackletaxhavens.com/TaxCast. You can also find us on iTunes. Let's move to the UK now. The government there has been talking a lot about reform. There's been some new guidance published this month on a new general anti-abuse rule that's been drafted. The British government said lots and lots of very bold things about wanting to tackle tax avoidance. Prime Minister David Cameron said companies like Starbucks and Amazon lacked moral scruples, and he said he was going to make damn sure they paid their fair share. You've been involved in drawing up the new guidance on this. I know you didn't get a lot of what you wanted, but I think you did get some of it. The worst of it is, apparently, that it won't tackle the Googles or the Amazons of this world. So what will it do?
The new general anti-abuse rule, it's very interesting to note the name. It's not a general anti-avoidance rule, it's a general anti-abuse rule, is very limited in its scope. Basically, the UK government has now come up with, if you like, 4 definitions of where somebody can be with regard to their tax affairs. They can be totally compliant, that is, they do absolutely, basically everything that the law requires, nothing complicated at all. They can do some tax planning, which is approved of by the government. That means that, for example, if you're going to save some money, you can put it either into a bank account on which you pay tax, or you can put it into what's called an ISA, an individual savings account, where, subject to certain financial limits, you can actually get your income tax-free. And because that's encouraged by the law, that's considered tax planning. And again, that's absolutely fine. You can do tax avoidance. Tax avoidance is trying to get around the spirit of the law. And they recognise that sometimes people manage that and get away with it, and they accept it. They reserve the right to challenge it, but they accept that it happens and it's not abusive. And then we come to the fourth category, which is abuse. Now, abuse is basically blatantly trying to undertake a transaction which has absolutely no purpose but to save tax, and really does exploit loopholes, does involve artificial structures, moves transactions into places where they wouldn't otherwise occur, involves the abuse of accounting rules as well as tax rules, and all sorts of other issues which are discussed at length in the guidance notes for this new anti-abuse rule. I was involved in drafting those guidance notes. I was quite surprised to be appointed, quite pleased in a sense I was. It was obviously a big question of whether somebody from the Tax Justice Network should be involved, and we agreed that I should be. There are some things that come out of this, although we have major reservations about the limitations of the abuse rule, which are, however, really welcome. If we look at the guidance notes, particularly Section B, for those who want to look them up on the web, because they're readily available now, there are some very bold statements. And in particular, throughout most of the parts of the world which use English law as its precedent, and that includes, for example, places like India, but also Australia and Canada and so on, where decisions in the UK House of Lords are still considered to be quite binding on their legal systems. We have seen in this general anti-abuse rule it being stated quite explicitly that some very important tax cases which have been used to underpin tax avoidance no longer are valid. In particular, the Duke of Westminster case from 1936. The Duke of Westminster, not the current one of his predecessors, paid his gardeners under a very archaic scheme called a deed of covenant, and as a result got tax relief on it, and claimed it was legal, and therefore he was allowed the tax relief. Amazingly, the House of Lords, which was then our Supreme Court, agreed, and ever since then that has been used as the basis for a lot of tax avoidance, because it says if you can find a form of wording which the law can't challenge, then you can get away with whatever abuse you can manage to fit around the law. That is simply no longer true. What the General Anti-Abuse Rule is saying quite explicitly, and it has in these guidance notes the power to overturn House of Lords cases, which is why it was quite so important. It's saying quite clearly that you are no longer able to arrange your affairs however you want, to undertake any abuse you think you can get away with, without the law being able to challenge it. Now, that is a major step forward, and I think justified, in my case, for my own personal satisfaction, the reason for being involved in this, because some cases that we've long argued needed to be overruled have been overruled. I don't think that means that the fight against tax avoidance in the UK has ended. I'm very pleased that in the last week the UK main opposition party, the Labour Party, has said it thinks that within 2 years the general anti-abuse rule needs to be reviewed and quite possibly upgraded. I think they're right. That will be just after the next general election by coincidence, when they could be back in power. Obviously that's their hope, but time will tell. But that's what they're trying to achieve. I think that is necessary. I don't believe this rule will collect very much money. That's its weakness. It doesn't tackle things like Google, Amazon and Starbucks. But let's celebrate the good bits. We have actually changed the environment. We are winning this intellectual argument. We've seen that with regard to automatic information exchange. We've won the intellectual argument. We've seen it with regard to what's happening in Europe with banking secrecy. We've won the intellectual argument. We've seen it with the general anti-abuse rule. We've won the intellectual argument that now tax avoidance is not a good thing. And what is more, it isn't even automatically legal now in the UK, which is people have always said in the past. So all these intellectual arguments that we've set out to win, we're winning now. Now we need to build on the basis of that the real foundations of delivering the justice that we're seeking.
You've been listening to a TaxCast special feature produced by me, Naomi Fowler. For the Tax Justice Network's monthly TaxCast, go to www.tackletaxhavens.com/TaxCast. And you can also find us on iTunes. For more information on the Tax Justice Network, go to www.taxjustice.net.